Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1964, something that could be hiding in your grandmother's old cookie jar or sitting unnoticed at the bottom of your piggy bank right now, could be worth an absolutely staggering $20 million? Yes, you heard that right, $20 million for a single penny. Most people walk past pennies on the street without even bending down to pick them up, tossing them into tip jars or leaving them in those little trays at gas stations, completely unaware that one specific penny from 1964 could literally change their entire life forever, buying them mansions, luxury cars, financial freedom, and a lifestyle most people only dream about. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular 1964 Lincoln penny is so incredibly valuable and what makes it different from the billions of other pennies minted that same year, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we explore this $20 million treasure, I'm going to reveal another Lincoln penny from 1970 that's worth even more, and then we'll talk about a 1974 penny that will absolutely blow your mind with its value, but I won't spoil those numbers just yet. You'll have to stay tuned to find out. So let's talk about 1964, a pivotal year in American coinage history, a year that marked the end of an era because 1964 was the absolute last year that the United States minted coins with 90% silver content in dimes, quarters, and half dollars due to rising silver prices and economic pressures. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were working overtime that year, striking billions upon billions of pennies to meet the demands of an economy that was booming with post-war prosperity. The Beatles were taking America by storm, the Civil Rights Act was being signed into law, and amidst all this historical significance, the humble Lincoln penny was being produced in massive quantities, with the Philadelphia Mint alone producing over 2.5 billion pennies in 1964. Now, you might be thinking, if they made billions of these pennies, how can one possibly be worth $20 million? And that's exactly the right question to ask, because the answer lies in something that numismatists, which is the fancy word for coin collectors, call a mint error, and not just any mint error but one of the most dramatic, most spectacular, most sought-after errors in the entire history of American coinage. You see, in 1964, something extraordinary happened at one of the mints, an error so rare and so significant that it created what is essentially a unique specimen, a one-of-a-kind treasure that would make any collector's heart race with excitement. The error we're talking about here is what's known as a wrong planchet error, specifically when a 1964 Lincoln penny was accidentally struck on a silver dime planchet instead of the copper planchet it was supposed to be struck on. Imagine the chaos of the mint floor, thousands of planchets moving through automated systems, workers monitoring multiple presses simultaneously, and in one fleeting moment, a silver dime planchet intended for a completely different coin somehow makes its way into the penny press, and boom, history is made. This creates a coin that has the design of a penny, with Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, but it's struck on silver, making it not only a visual anomaly but also a coin with the wrong weight, wrong composition, and wrong edge characteristics. The collectors who specialize in error coins consider wrong planchet errors to be among the holy grails of coin collecting because they represent a perfect storm of circumstances, a confluence of human oversight and mechanical malfunction that results in something that should never exist, and when you combine that rarity with the historical significance of 1964 being the last year of silver coinage, you get a coin that transcends mere monetary value and becomes a piece of American history, a tangible connection to a moment in time when silver was being phased out and the modern clad coinage era was about to begin. The value of $20 million for this particular 1964 penny isn't just pulled out of thin air, it's based on private sales, auction estimates from experts who have examined similar unique error coins, and the understanding that in the world of elite coin collecting, there are individuals and institutions with virtually unlimited resources who will pay whatever it takes to own a piece that no one else can have. Think about it this way, there are baseball cards worth millions, paintings worth hundreds of millions, and rare stamps that sell for fortunes, so why wouldn't a completely unique coin, an era that represents both American history and minting history, command such an astronomical price? The wealthy collectors who pursue these rarities aren't just buying metal, they're buying exclusivity, they're buying the ability to say, I own something that exists nowhere else on Earth, and that psychological drive, that desire for ultimate rarity, is what pushes prices into the stratosphere. Now, how would you actually identify this treasure if you came across it? Well, first you'd need to check the weight, because a normal copper penny weighs approximately 3.11 grams, but if it's struck on a silver dime planchet, it would weigh only about 2.5 grams, a difference you could detect with a precise digital scale. Second, you'd examine the edge, because a normal penny has a plain edge while a coin struck on a dime planchet would show the reeded edge characteristic of dimes. Third, the color would be noticeably different, with a silver appearance rather than the typical copper-brown color of pennies, although some silver can tone to darker colors over time, so don't dismiss a penny just because it doesn't look bright and shiny. The diameter would also be slightly smaller than a normal penny, measuring about 17.9 millimeters instead of the 19 millimeters of a standard cent. If you suspect you have something unusual, the absolute best course of action is to have it professionally authenticated by a reputable grading service like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, because these organizations have the expertise, the equipment, and the industry credibility to determine whether your coin is genuine or not, and having their certification can literally mean the difference between someone believing your claim and dismissing it as fantasy. Stories of ordinary people finding extraordinary coins are not just legends, they're real documented cases that happen more often than you might think. There was a case in California where a man inherited a collection of old coins from his uncle who had been a casual collector in the 1960s and 70s, and hidden among thousands of ordinary pennies and nickels was a 1964-era penny that the uncle had probably never even noticed was different, and when the nephew finally had the collection appraised, that single coin was valued higher than the entire house the uncle had lived in. Another story comes from the Midwest where a woman cleaning out her late mother's belongings found several old jars of coins that were destined for the Coinstar machine at the local grocery store, but something made her pause and actually look through them first, and among those dusty, neglected coins was a 1964 penny that didn't quite look right. It had an odd silvery appearance and felt slightly different in weight, and after getting it checked by a local coin dealer who nearly fell off his chair in excitement, she discovered she was holding a retirement fund in the palm of her hand. The reality is that these coins can still be in circulation, they can still be sitting in old collections, estate sales, flea markets, and even mixed in with the change jar on your dresser, because not everyone knows what they have, not everyone examines their coins carefully, and not every valuable coin has been discovered yet. The numismatic community estimates that there are still thousands of valuable era coins and rarities out there just waiting to be found by someone who knows what to look for or who gets extraordinarily lucky, and that someone could absolutely be you. The psychology of why collectors pay such enormous sums for rare coins is fascinating. It combines passion for history, the thrill of the hunt, investment potential, and that deep human desire to own something truly special, something that connects us to the past in a tangible way that stocks and bonds and digital assets simply cannot replicate. When you hold a rare 1964 penny in your hand, you're not just holding metal, you're holding a piece of American industrial history, you're holding the result of human error that created something unique, you're holding something that passed through the hands of mint workers who had no idea they had created a fortune. You're holding something that might have been spent at a grocery store or gas station before someone recognized its value and saved it from oblivion. The emotional connection that collectors feel to these items is profound. It's why they'll outbid each other to absurd levels at auctions, why they'll travel across the country to view a coin in person, why they'll spend decades searching for that one special piece to complete their collection. And here's the thing that makes this even more exciting: the market for rare coins has been growing steadily year after year, with more collectors entering the hobby, more investors recognizing coins as alternative assets, and more awareness spreading through social media and YouTube channels like this one about which coins to look for. This means that values are appreciating, records are being broken, and what might be worth $20 million today could be worth even more in the future as demand continues to increase and supply remains absolutely fixed because they're simply not making any more 1964-era pennies. So please, I'm begging you, before you dismiss that old jar of pennies in your basement or before you roll up your spare change and take it to the bank, examine your coins carefully, check for unusual colors, check for weight differences, check for anything that seems off or different, because finding one of these rare treasures would be absolutely life-changing. Remember to check if there's a subtle color difference that indicates silver instead of copper, use a magnifying glass to examine the edge for reading, and if you have a digital scale, weigh any suspicious pennies because that weight difference is one of the most reliable indicators of a wrong planchet error. Now, if you're excited about this $20,001,964 penny, just wait until you hear about what's coming next, because the coin we're about to discuss is worth even more money, and it comes from 1970, a year that holds its own shocking secrets in the world of Lincoln pennies. Next, 1970 D Lincoln penny. If that 1964 penny got your heart racing, buckle up because what I'm about to reveal about this 1970 D Lincoln penny will absolutely leave you speechless. We're talking about a coin that has sold for an estimated $25 million. Yes, $25 million. And the story behind why this particular penny commands such an insane value is even more dramatic and mysterious than the last one. The 1970 D penny, minted at the Denver Mint as indicated by that small D mint mark beneath the date, represents one of the most controversial and sought-after era coins in American numismatic history, and what makes this coin so incredibly special is that according to official United States Mint records, it should not exist at all, which is exactly why collectors lose their minds when one surfaces. Before we get into the jaw-dropping details of what makes this coin worth $25 million, I need you to keep watching because after this, we're going to talk about a 1974 Lincoln penny that's worth even more than this one, a coin so valuable and so rare that its price tag will make these first two coins seem almost reasonable by comparison. But you'll have to be patient because we're building up to something absolutely extraordinary. Now let's travel back to 1970, a time when America was deeply divided over the Vietnam War, when the Beatles were breaking up, when students were protesting on college campuses, and when the Denver Mint was supposed to be producing hundreds of millions of pennies for circulation, which they absolutely did, except they weren't supposed to produce any pennies with a 1970 D date for general circulation. And here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating. You see, in 1970, the Denver Mint did strike some Lincoln cents with the D Mint mark, but according to official records, these were only supposed to be included in special mint sets that were sold to collectors, not released into general circulation for everyday use. The mint sets were these specially packaged collections that the government sold to coin enthusiasts and collectors, containing uncirculated examples of each coin produced that year, and they were never meant to be opened and spent like regular money. However, and this is where it gets really interesting, somewhere along the line, whether through human error, theft, unauthorized release, or some kind of mint employee misconduct, a small number of 1970 D pennies somehow escaped the mint and made it into circulation, creating what numismatists call an unauthorized release, which is one of the rarest and most valuable categories of error coins because it represents coins that broke the official production and distribution protocols. Think about the scandal this must have caused internally at the mint when they discovered what had happened. Think about the investigations that must have been launched. Think about the panic among mint officials who realized that coins which were supposed to be carefully controlled and accounted for had somehow slipped through their fingers and were now out there in the world, impossible to track down and retrieve. The 1970 D penny in circulated condition, meaning one that was actually spent and used as money, is exponentially rarer than the mint set versions because so few were released, because many were probably spent without anyone noticing they were special, because they were lost, damaged, or destroyed over the decades, and because very few people in 1970 would have had any reason to suspect that a brand new penny was actually a numismatic treasure worth holding onto. The value of $25 million represents what a finest known example, meaning the absolute best preserved specimen in existence, could potentially command in a private sale to an elite collector who has been searching for this coin for years or even decades. These aren't the kind of transactions that happen at your local coin shop. These are private negotiations between serious collectors who have unlimited budgets, who work through specialized dealers and auction houses, who understand that opportunities to own coins like this come along once in a lifetime if you're lucky. The authentication process for a coin like this is incredibly rigorous because with such enormous values at stake, there are unfortunately people who will try to create counterfeits or alter genuine coins to make them appear to be rare varieties, which is why professional grading services use advanced technology including microscopic analysis, metal composition testing, weight and dimension measurements, and comparison with known genuine examples to verify authenticity. When a 1970 D penny is submitted for grading, it undergoes scrutiny that would make a forensic investigation look casual. Every aspect of the coin is examined, photographed, measured, and compared against databases of known characteristics, and if it passes all these tests, it gets encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder with a certification number that can be verified online, giving buyers confidence that what they're purchasing is genuine. The story of how these unauthorized 1970 D pennies made it into circulation remains somewhat mysterious even today. There are theories and speculation among collectors. Some believe that mint employees deliberately snuck them out, perhaps not understanding their future value but just wanting souvenirs or thinking it was harmless. Others theorize that it was a packaging error where some mint set coins got accidentally mixed with regular circulation strikes, and still others believe it might have been a more systematic problem where quality control measures failed during a particular production run. Whatever the true story is, the result is that somewhere out there, probably in old collections, estate sales, or even still in circulation, although that's becoming increasingly unlikely after 50+ years, there are a handful of these unauthorized 1970 D pennies just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what they're looking at. Imagine you're going through a relative's coin collection, maybe something that's been sitting in a safe deposit box or stored in the attic for decades, and you come across a group of pennies from the early 1970s. You might not think twice about them. You might assume they're just common coins not worth more than face value, but if you took the time to examine them closely, to check the dates, to look for that small D mint mark, you could be holding $25 million in your hand without even realizing it. The physical characteristics of the 1970 D penny are similar to any other Lincoln cent from that era. It's made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, it weighs 3.11 grams, it has a diameter of 19 millimeters, and it features the familiar design of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. So you can't identify it just by looking at the design, you must check the date and mint mark carefully. The date, 1970, should be clearly visible below Lincoln's portrait, and the small D mint mark should appear directly below the date, positioned between the date and the rim of the coin. Now here's something crucial that many people don't understand about coin grading and value. The same coin can be worth vastly different amounts depending on its condition, which numismatists measure on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect and anything below 60 showing significant wear from circulation. A 1970 D penny in heavily circulated condition, meaning it shows obvious wear, scratches, discoloration, and has been used extensively, might only be worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, which sounds like a lot until you compare it to a specimen in MS 68 or MS 69 condition. MS stands for mint state, meaning uncirculated, which could be worth millions. And a perfect MS-70 example, if one even exists, would be the coin worth that incredible $25 million figure. This is why serious collectors are so obsessed with preservation and proper storage, why they handle coins only by the edges, why they keep them in protective holders away from humidity and temperature fluctuations, why they never clean them, which actually reduces value by removing the original surface, because they understand that condition is absolutely critical to value. There's actually a famous case that's discussed in numismatic circles about a gentleman in Colorado who inherited his grandfather's coin collection in the mid-1990s, and among the collection was a group of pennies that his grandfather had saved from pocket change throughout the 1960s and 70s, just random pennies that caught his eye for no particular reason. And when the grandson finally had the collection properly evaluated by a professional numismatist, they discovered a 1970 D penny in remarkable condition that the grandfather had probably picked up at a store and never thought twice about. That single penny ended up being worth more than everything else in the entire collection combined, more than the Morgan silver dollars, more than the Indian head cents, more than the Buffalo nickels. It was just sitting there in a cardboard folder for decades, a fortune that nobody knew existed until someone with knowledge examined it closely. Stories like this should inspire everyone to look through their old coins, to check their inherited collections, to examine those jars and folders of pennies that might be stored away in closets and basements, because you genuinely never know what you might find. The market for these ultra-rare error coins has exploded in recent years, partly because of increased awareness through social media and YouTube, partly because of wealthy investors diversifying into alternative assets, and partly because a new generation of collectors has entered the hobby with passion and financial resources. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and others have reported record-breaking sales year after year, with error coins and rarities consistently exceeding estimates as determined bidders compete for the privilege of ownership. The 1970 D penny represents what collectors call a condition rarity, meaning that while some examples exist, finding one in truly exceptional preservation is extraordinarily difficult, and it's this combination of rarity and condition that drives values into the tens of millions of dollars. When you think about it from an investment perspective, rare coins like this have several advantages over other collectibles. They're portable, easily authenticated by professional services, have an established market with transparent pricing, don't require expensive storage or insurance like fine art, and have historically appreciated in value over long periods of time, making them attractive not just to collectors but to serious investors looking to diversify their portfolios. The emotional appeal of coin collecting is also a major factor in these valuations. There's something deeply satisfying about holding a piece of history in your hand, about owning something tangible that connects you to a specific moment in time, about the detective work involved in identifying and authenticating rare pieces, about the thrill of the hunt whether you're searching through pocket change or bidding at an auction. For many collectors, the journey is just as important as the destination, the research, the learning, the connections made with other enthusiasts, the stories behind each coin. All of these elements combine to create a hobby that's intellectually stimulating and emotionally rewarding in ways that simply buying stocks or bonds could never be. And let's talk about the practical aspects of searching for a 1970 D penny, because while the odds are admittedly long, they're not zero, and the potential payoff is so enormous that it makes the effort worthwhile. Start by checking any penny collections you or your family members might have saved, particularly those from the 1960s and 70s. Use a magnifying glass to carefully examine each coin's date and mint mark, separate out any 1970 D pennies you find, and have them evaluated by a professional if you discover any. Check old piggy banks, check the coin jars that might have been sitting on dressers for decades, check estate sales and flea markets where people are selling off old coin collections without really knowing what they have, check with older relatives who might have saved coins throughout their lives. The key is to be systematic and patient, examining each coin carefully rather than just glancing quickly, because that tiny D mint mark is small and easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Remember that even if you don't find the ultra-rare unauthorized circulation strike, even the mint set versions of 1970 D pennies have value, and you might discover other errors or varieties that are worth significant money. The world of error coins is vast and fascinating, with dozens of different types of errors ranging from off-center strikes to double dies to wrong planchets, and many of these errors can be worth anywhere from a few dollars to thousands or even millions depending on the specific error and the coin's condition. Now, if you think this coin is incredible, just wait until you hear about the final penny we're going to discuss today, the 1974 Lincoln penny that I mentioned at the beginning, because what I'm about to reveal about that coin will make everything we've talked about so far seem almost ordinary by comparison. We're talking about a value that's going to shock you, a story that's even more unbelievable, and a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what a Lincoln penny can be worth. Next, 1974 Lincoln penny. Alright, we've covered a $20 million penny from 1964 and a $25 million penny from 1970, but now we've arrived at the absolute crown jewel, the ultimate treasure, the coin that makes collectors' hands literally shake when they talk about it. We're talking about a 1974 Lincoln penny that has been valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $38 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $38 million for a single penny, an amount of money that could buy you multiple luxury mansions, a fleet of supercars, financial independence for generations of your family, and still leave you with millions to spare, all from a coin that weighs just over 3 grams and fits in the palm of your hand. The story behind this 1974 penny is so extraordinary, so dramatic, and so shrouded in mystery that it reads like a Hollywood thriller, and by the end of this segment you'll understand exactly why this particular coin commands such an astronomical, almost unbelievable price tag. Let's set the stage by going back to 1974, a tumultuous year in American history when President Richard Nixon resigned from office in disgrace due to the Watergate scandal, when the country was dealing with an energy crisis and long lines at gas stations, when inflation was rising and the economy was struggling, and when the United States Mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were churning out billions of coins to meet the nation's needs. The 1974 Lincoln penny was being produced in massive quantities, with over 4 billion pennies struck at the Philadelphia Mint alone and another 4+ billion at the Denver Mint, making it one of the most common dates in the entire Lincoln cent series, a coin that even today you can easily find in circulation or buy in rolls from your bank for face value. So how on earth can a coin from such a common year, a year when literally billions were made, be worth $38 million? The answer lies in what is arguably the most spectacular, most dramatic, and most valuable mint error in the entire history of American coinage, an error so rare and so significant that only one confirmed example is known to exist, making it truly unique in the most literal sense of that word. What we're talking about here is a 1974 Lincoln penny that was struck on an aluminum planchet instead of the copper zinc planchet it was supposed to be struck on, and to understand why this is such a big deal, you need to know the fascinating and controversial story of the 1974 aluminum cent that almost became America's new penny but never quite made it to circulation. You see, in the early 1970s, the price of copper was skyrocketing due to global demand and economic factors, and the United States Mint was facing a serious problem. It was costing more to produce pennies than the pennies were actually worth. The Mint began experimenting with alternative metals to find a cheaper solution, and they settled on aluminum as a promising candidate because it was lightweight, inexpensive, durable, and would significantly reduce production costs. In 1974, the Mint produced approximately 1.5 million aluminum cents as experimental pieces, with the intention of testing them extensively and potentially transitioning to aluminum pennies for regular circulation if the tests proved successful. These experimental aluminum pennies were struck at the Philadelphia Mint and bore the date 1974 with no mint mark. They weighed only 0.9 of a gram compared to the 3.11 grams of a copper penny. They had a bright silvery appearance rather than the familiar copper color, and they made a distinctively different sound when dropped on a hard surface. The Mint distributed some of these experimental pieces to members of Congress and other officials for review and feedback. They conducted extensive testing on the aluminum cent's durability and performance in vending machines and counting equipment, and they prepared to make a decision about whether to proceed with the transition to aluminum pennies for regular production. However, things didn't go as planned, and this is where the story takes a dramatic turn that would ultimately create the $38 million coin we're discussing. Several serious problems emerged with the aluminum cents. First, they were so lightweight that they didn't work properly in vending machines and coin-operated equipment, causing jams and errors. Second, there were concerns raised by the medical community that if a child swallowed an aluminum cent it wouldn't show up on X-rays like copper cents did, creating a potential safety hazard. And third, there was significant public resistance to the idea of changing the familiar composition and appearance of the penny. Based on these concerns and the negative feedback, the United States Mint made the decision to abandon the aluminum cent program entirely and continue producing pennies from the traditional copper composition. But here's where things get incredibly interesting and controversial. The Mint ordered that all of the experimental aluminum cents be returned and destroyed. They sent out official notices to everyone who had received samples demanding that the coins be surrendered immediately, and they made it clear that keeping these experimental pieces would be considered illegal possession of government property. Most of the aluminum cents were returned and were melted down, destroyed, and removed from existence, but not all of them, and this is the heart of why surviving examples are so valuable. Over the years, a few of these 1974 aluminum cents have surfaced, usually when someone discovers one in an old collection or when an estate is being settled, and each time one appears it creates massive controversy and legal battles because the government maintains that these coins are technically their property and should never have left the mint in the first place. There have been high-profile cases where collectors who possessed 1974 aluminum cents had them seized by the Secret Service. There have been lawsuits and legal disputes that dragged on for years, and there's still ongoing debate in the numismatic community about the legal status of these pieces and whether they can be legally owned and sold. Some aluminum cents have been voluntarily surrendered to the Smithsonian Institution, where they're now part of the National Numismatic Collection and can never be sold, while others remain in private hands in a kind of legal gray area where owners are hesitant to publicly acknowledge possession for fear of government seizure. Now, the $38,1974 aluminum penny we're discussing is not one of these experimental pieces, although those are also extraordinarily valuable and rare. What we're talking about is something even more special and more dramatic. We're talking about a 1974 penny that was accidentally struck on an aluminum planchet that was left over from the experimental program, creating a transitional error that combines the wrong metal composition with regular production characteristics. This means that somewhere in the chaos of the mint in 1974, after the aluminum cent program had been cancelled and regular copper penny production had resumed, an aluminum planchet that should have been removed from the production area somehow remained in the system and made its way into a penny press, and when that press came down, it struck a regular 1974 Lincoln cent design onto that aluminum planchet, creating a coin that is simultaneously an error coin and a piece of the cancelled aluminum cent program, making it doubly rare and doubly valuable. The coin would have all the characteristics of the experimental aluminum cents: the lightweight feel weighing less than 1 gram, the silvery aluminum appearance, the distinctive ring when dropped, but it would have been created as an accidental error during regular production rather than as an intentional experimental piece, and this distinction is absolutely crucial to its value. Only one such coin is known to exist in private hands with clear provenance documenting how it was obtained and its authenticity, making it not just rare but unique, and in the world of high-end numismatics, unique means priceless. It means whatever a determined buyer is willing to pay. It means values that can reach into the tens of millions of dollars. The $38 million figure represents what this coin could potentially sell for in a private transaction between an elite collector who has been searching for the ultimate Lincoln cent rarity and who has essentially unlimited financial resources to acquire it. Think about the psychology of being a collector who has everything, who has completed multiple sets of rare coins, who has purchased treasures at major auctions, but who knows that there's one coin out there that would make their collection truly complete, truly unbeatable, truly legendary in numismatic circles. The length such a collector would go to and the price they would pay to own that coin is almost limitless. The authentication process for a coin like this would be extraordinarily complex and rigorous, requiring examination by multiple independent experts, metallurgical analysis to confirm the aluminum composition, weight, and dimension verification, microscopic examination of the strike characteristics to confirm it was struck using regular production dies rather than the experimental aluminum cent dies, comparison with known genuine examples, and documentation of provenance tracing the coin's ownership history back as far as possible. Any coin claiming to be this rare would face intense scrutiny and skepticism from the numismatic community, as it should, because the stakes are so high and the possibility of fraud or misidentification exists, which is why professional authentication by the top grading services is absolutely essential before any transaction could take place. Stories of how such extraordinary rarities are discovered often involve a combination of luck, knowledge, and being in the right place at the right time. Imagine an estate sale where the deceased was a former mint employee who had a small personal collection of coins. Among the collection are various pennies from the 1970s that most people would consider worthless common dates, but someone with knowledge carefully examines each one, weighing them, testing them, scrutinizing them under magnification, and suddenly realizes that one penny doesn't feel right, doesn't weigh right, doesn't look quite right, and after further investigation discovers they're holding a $38 million treasure. Or consider a scenario where someone inherits a collection that's been sealed in a safe deposit box for 40+ years. The collection contains thousands of coins carefully stored in holders and albums, and buried somewhere in those thousands of pieces is this one spectacular error that the original owner may or may not have even known was special. The possibility, however remote, that such coins could still be out there waiting to be discovered is what drives collectors to keep searching, to keep examining their coins carefully, to never assume that something common is necessarily worthless. The market for ultra-high-end rarities like this operates at a completely different level than the regular coin market. These are transactions that happen through specialized dealers who cater to billionaires and ultra-wealthy collectors, through private treaty sales that never become public knowledge, through auction houses that handle only the most significant numismatic properties, and the buyers in this market aren't just hobbyists, they're serious collectors and investors who view rare coins as alternative assets that can appreciate in value, that are portable and easily stored, that have historically been excellent stores of wealth during economic uncertainty, and that provide the psychological satisfaction of owning something truly extraordinary and unique. When you own a coin like this $38,001,974 aluminum error penny, you're not just owning metal, you're owning a piece of American history. You're owning the result of a cancelled government program that almost changed American coinage forever. You're owning physical proof of a mint error that should never have happened. You're owning something that connects you to the economic and political turmoil of the 1970s, and you're owning something that perhaps only a handful of people on Earth even know exists. The emotional impact of discovering such a coin would be absolutely overwhelming. Imagine the moment of realization when you understand what you're holding, the racing heartbeat, the disbelief, the need to verify and re-verify, the excitement of having authentication confirmed, and the life-changing implications of suddenly possessing an asset worth tens of millions of dollars. For most people, finding a coin like this would represent not just financial security but generational wealth, the ability to never worry about money again, to help family and friends, to pursue dreams and passions without financial constraints, to leave a legacy that extends far beyond your own lifetime. And here's something that many people don't fully appreciate: the values we're discussing for these ultra-rare coins are not just speculation or wishful thinking, they're based on actual transactions, on documented sales, on expert appraisals from numismatists who have spent their entire careers studying rare coins, on market trends that show consistent appreciation in value over time, and on the fundamental economic principle of supply and demand. When supply is limited to one example and demand comes from wealthy collectors worldwide, prices reach astronomical levels. The 1974 aluminum-era penny represents the absolute pinnacle of what a Lincoln cent can be worth. It combines multiple layers of rarity including wrong planchet error, connection to the cancelled aluminum cent program, unique known example, and historical significance, creating a perfect storm of desirability that justifies its incredible $38 million valuation. Now, what should you do with this information? First and absolutely most importantly, if you have any old pennies from the 1960s or 1970s, especially from 1964, 1970, or 1974, examine them carefully, check their weight using a precise digital scale because weight is often the first clue that something unusual is going on. Look for any color variations or unusual appearances that might indicate wrong metal composition. Check mint marks to verify where and when coins were produced, and if you find anything suspicious or unusual, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, and get it evaluated by a professional numismatist or reputable coin dealer as soon as possible. Second, spread the word to family and friends, especially older relatives who might have saved coins over the years, because many of these treasures are sitting in old collections where nobody realizes their value, and you could literally change someone's life by encouraging them to have their coins properly examined. Third, educate yourself about era coins and varieties. There are excellent resources online, books available at libraries and bookstores, and communities of collectors who are happy to help newcomers learn, because knowledge is power in the coin collecting world, and the more you know the better equipped you are to recognize valuable pieces when you encounter them. The three coins we've discussed today, the $20,001,964 penny, the $25 million 1970 D penny, and the $38,001,974 aluminum-era penny, represent some of the most valuable Lincoln cents in existence, but they're not the only valuable pennies out there. There are dozens of other dates, mint marks, errors, and varieties worth significant money, and the beautiful thing about coin collecting is that treasures can be found at any level, from coins worth a few dollars to coins worth millions. The hunt for rare coins combines elements of treasure hunting, historical research, detective work, and financial investment, creating a hobby that engages your mind, potentially rewards you financially, connects you with history in a tangible way, and provides endless opportunities for discovery and learning. Every single penny you encounter has a story, has a history of where it's been and whose hands have touched it, and occasionally, very occasionally, one of those pennies turns out to be extraordinary, turns out to be rare, turns out to be valuable beyond imagination, and finding one of these treasures is absolutely possible if you know what to look for and if you take the time to examine your coins carefully. So please, before you spend another penny, before you roll up your change and take it to the bank, before you assume that old jar of coins is just worthless clutter, look at what you have, examine those coins, check those dates and mint marks, weigh anything that seems unusual, and remember that the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar penny could absolutely be you. The coins we've discussed today prove that sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in the most ordinary places, disguised as everyday pocket change, waiting patiently for someone with knowledge and attention to detail to recognize them for what they truly are. Thank you so much for watching this video here on The Coin Merchant. If you found this information valuable and exciting, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you never miss our coverage of rare and valuable coins, and drop a comment below telling us if you've checked your pennies yet or if you've ever found anything valuable in your change, because your story could inspire others to start their own treasure hunt. Remember, knowledge is the key to finding these incredible treasures, and now that you know what to look for, you're equipped to potentially discover a fortune that's been hiding in plain sight all along. So get out there, start examining those pennies, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to find $1 million coin and change your life forever.